My daughter came home from a Christmas party at my husband's family's house crying. When I asked her what happened, she gave me a present without saying anything. "Mom, look at this. Why do I have to deal with this?" she said. I was shocked when I opened the present and saw it wasn't something suitable for a child. I went to the police right away and asked them to find out who gave it to her. The police found out that Ed, someone from the party, did it. It caused a big fuss in the family, and Ed got in serious trouble. I'm in my 40s, and my husband, who is in his 30s, works at the same company as me. I started working at this company when I was in my mid-30s. At my old job, I decided to switch because my boss called me old-fashioned for not being married by 30. But at my current job, they care more about how well you work than how old you are or what gender you are. My husband, who is now my boss, took care of me when I first started. We got married quickly and now have a daughter in 3rd grade. She's quiet and loves to read, and she's kind to everyone. My husband's sister causes a lot of problems, and we don't get along. But I'm lucky to have a good relationship with my in-laws. My sister-in-law doesn't like that I'm older than my husband and that we had a quick wedding. She used to make mean comments about my age and appearance, even though she used to visit us a lot when we first got married. She'd make fun of my body after having a baby and say hurtful things about getting older. Despite all that, I try to ignore her negativity. I often feel insecure because I'm older than my husband. I try not to let it bother me too much, but sometimes my sister-in-law's hurtful comments sting. Just before I was due to give birth, she announced her own pregnancy and had a quick wedding too. It seemed like she didn't care about anyone else's feelings. Thankfully, she stopped visiting when she moved away with my in-laws after getting married. I was relieved to be away from her sarcasm, and I could focus on preparing for childbirth. When I finally gave birth to my daughter, it was tough, but my husband's support gave me strength. Hearing our daughter's first cry was an emotional moment for both of us. 7 months later, my sister-in-law had a baby boy and started visiting us again, just to make mean comments. She even compared our children, saying ridiculous things like my daughter's skin would be wrinkled because I was older. I was too busy with my newborn to pay much attention to her remarks. But then she started taking things from our house without asking, like diapers and formula, and it baffled me. Eventually, she stopped coming when her husband's job moved them to another state. We had a peaceful time until our daughter started elementary school and found out her cousin, my sister-in-law's son, was in the same class. I knew then that my peace was over. Despite our rocky relationship, my daughter and her cousin got along well. My daughter, being older and kind-hearted, took care of him. They ended up in the same 3rd grade class, and one day my daughter won an award for her reading. During the break between summer and winter breaks, we visited my in-laws. There were relatives present who usually didn't get together, possibly because they heard about my daughter winning an award for her reading reflection. However, my sister-in-law wasn't happy that our family was getting so much attention. She accused my daughter of taking a book that was supposed to be for her son. In reality, they had just swapped books because they couldn't decide which one to read. After finishing both books, they discussed and decided which book report to write together. My nephew liked the book my daughter read first, so she let him have it. But my sister-in-law didn't believe this explanation. She started spreading rumors that I had helped my daughter with her writing competition by using a connection with one of the judges. These rumors made my daughter feel really down. She even stopped reading her favorite books. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to talk to my in-laws about everything that had happened. But first, I confessed everything to my husband. It was the first time I told him about all the things his sister had done to me since we got married. My husband was furious and decided we should tell his parents together. They went to my sister-in-law's house and confronted her. She was surprised, but started resenting me even more. She called me names and accused me of acting like a victim. After that, she kept calling and leaving angry messages, but I ignored them. Eventually, the calls stopped. However, in December, a children's Christmas party was organized at my in-laws' house. It was the first time they had done something like that, and I wondered why they decided to do it this year. My daughter was thrilled to get an invitation to a Christmas party. She had fond memories of a party at her kindergarten and expected her elementary school to have one too. Unfortunately, her school didn't celebrate Christmas due to their stance on religious events. I thought it was a shame to miss out on such a festive occasion just because of religious reasons, but it seemed some parents were particular about it. So I suggested to my daughter that we have our own celebration at home. Last year, we had a great time exchanging gifts and enjoying each other's company. The invitation for the party at my in-laws' house mentioned bringing a gift within a $20 budget. My daughter and I went shopping together at a nearby mall to pick out the perfect present. She chose one of her favorite picture books, hoping to share her love for it with whoever received it at the party. We lived just a short bus ride away from my in-laws' house, so I let my mother-in-law know when my daughter was on her way. She kindly offered to pick her up from the bus stop. When she called to say my daughter had arrived safely, I felt relieved. However, my relief didn't last long. About 30 minutes later, I heard the front door open unexpectedly. It was a weekday, and my husband was at work. I was working from home because my daughter was on winter break. The sudden sound of the door opening startled me. I rushed to the entrance, alarmed by the unexpected noise, only to find my daughter sitting on the floor, crying. She handed me a gift-wrapped bag and said I would understand once I looked inside. As I opened it, I found a torn-up newspaper with my daughter's reading reflection printed on it, along with a message card written in red ink. The card warned that if we got too arrogant, our family would end up like the torn stuffed animal inside, which was covered in red ink that looked like blood splatters. It was clear this wasn't just a harmless prank. I couldn't believe my daughter would receive such a cruel gift by chance. When I asked her about it, she told me that my sister-in-law had prepared it specifically for her. This was supposed to be a child-focused Christmas party, and we had all agreed that adults wouldn't personally prepare gifts. That's why I didn't go with my daughter. But somehow, my sister-in-law managed to sneak in this malicious present. My confusion grew when I realized my mother-in-law hadn't mentioned my sister-in-law's presence. My mother-in-law had always encouraged us to inform her if her daughter did or said anything to upset us. I had even told my daughter to do the same. I tried to explain to my aunt what had happened, but she interrupted and said she didn't call for me. She mentioned that only children with a connection to missionary schools were allowed. My daughter asked what a missionary school was, and I struggled to find an answer. Recently, one of our relatives had gotten into a missionary school, which had become a big topic of discussion. My sister-in-law's son had also attended a missionary kindergarten. Hearing this, I realized that many of us had connections to such schools, even if we weren't aware of it. We had chosen to send our daughter to a local kindergarten and elementary school instead. It seemed like my sister-in-law was using this topic to criticize my daughter. I told my daughter to stay inside, and I rushed to the police station alone. I argued that the threatening gift was a serious matter. Although the police suggested resolving it within the family, I insisted that threats could be valid even among family members. I explained that the gift contained not only threatening words but also a mutilated stuffed animal, which I believed was a malicious act. Just then, a female police officer happened to pass by. She agreed that threats and violence within a family should be taken seriously. The female officer took charge and empathized with how scared my daughter and I must have been. After providing my sister-in-law's address, she promised to go and warn her right away. In the end, my wishes were fulfilled. I couldn't help but shudder at the thought of what might have happened if that police officer hadn't passed by. It was disheartening to realize that some in the police force wouldn't act unless it was an actual incident or accident. I wondered how I could protect my daughter in case of an emergency. That evening, when my husband returned from work, I told him everything that had happened. He was furious with his sister for ruining our daughter's fun out of spite. He immediately called his parents to protest. Since the Christmas party was happening at their house, they claimed they had no idea about it. They explained that they had left the back door unlocked, so my sister-in-law might have entered that way. My mother-in-law apologized for not paying attention to who was coming and going, as she was busy picking up other grandchildren nearby. My father-in-law had been away at work during the day. The Christmas party was mainly organized by the middle school-aged nephews and nieces, and my mother-in-law had mostly left it to them. The police officer had firmly warned my sister-in-law later on. From what I heard, she was told that any further reports could lead to more than just a warning, so things should be fine for the most part. However, my in-laws were distressed by my sister-in-law's actions, which had involved the police. It could potentially lead to criminal behavior. Consequently, they called a meeting with both our family and my sister-in-law's family, with the parents present, for discussion. When we arrived at my in-laws' house for the meeting, my sister-in-law and her husband hadn't shown up yet. They finally appeared right at the last minute, with my sister-in-law clearly sulking. It was obvious she wasn't remorseful and was resenting me for calling the police. Her husband, sitting next to her, looked clueless about why they were summoned. He seemed to have been called without being informed of the reason. During the discussion, he was shocked to hear for the first time about all the things his wife had done to our family, unaware that things had gotten to this point. My sister-in-law's husband profusely apologized to us, feeling sorry. My in-laws saw my sister-in-law's reaction and asked if she had anything to say. But all she replied with was, "Not really." She didn't seem to understand why she needed to apologize, acting as if she hadn't done anything wrong. She said, "I didn't do anything bad. The police came but didn't arrest me, right? So that means I didn't do anything wrong." Everyone else was shocked by her logic. It was like they couldn't believe what they were hearing. It felt like a waste of time just lecturing her. Then, out of nowhere, my sister-in-law's husband announced that he was divorcing her. We were all puzzled because it seemed like they had a good marriage. When we looked surprised, he confessed that he had reached his limit with her behavior. Since they got married, he hadn't complained about her not doing housework during pregnancy. He hadn't scolded her for neglecting childcare and going out to have fun, thinking it was just stress from being a new parent. But her carelessness with housework once led to a small fire, forcing them to move. She was also vain, insisting that their son attend a prestigious kindergarten when she heard other kids in the neighborhood were applying. However, he didn't get in due to lack of preparation, and embarrassed, she forced them to move again. Although his job did involve transfers, they weren't as frequent as their moves suggested. He revealed that the frequent moves were not just because of his job transfers. To maintain my sister-in-law's image, they moved frequently, especially after her son failed to get into a prestigious kindergarten. She tried to enroll him in an international kindergarten, but when that didn't work, they barely managed to get him into a missionary kindergarten. They only agreed on a public elementary school because their son wanted it, and my sister-in-law reluctantly complied after her husband supported their son's wishes. He was worried that her vanity would put their son's well-being at risk. He had been considering divorce for a while, but with her harassment becoming more apparent, he felt he had no choice but to announce it. My sister-in-law, somewhat aware of her actions, didn't dispute what he said, but seemed surprised by the divorce announcement. She started apologizing to us, thinking it would help. She claimed it was just a joke or a prank and never expected us to take it seriously. But I reminded her that her husband had criticized her, asking if she could say the same thing to her own child. Her actions were unimaginable for a parent. Just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they have parental feelings. There are people who can't be real parents, and she might be one of them. My husband, seeing her crying, told her sternly that crying wouldn't fix anything at her age. She needed to stop thinking tears would get her out of trouble. She cried even more, insisting she did nothing wrong and wasn't to blame. She felt everyone was ganging up on her, blaming her because her brother married an older woman. She argued that her marriage and her harassment were totally separate issues. We already thought she was a bit odd, but even my husband was astonished by her lack of understanding. No one tried to comfort her, as she seemed inconsolable. The discussion couldn't continue, so we decided to adjourn for the day. Her husband had to drag her to the car and take her home. Their divorce eventually happened, but it was messy because of her stubborn refusal to agree. Her son's accidental revelation might have been a factor in her agreeing to the divorce. He, without any malicious intent, shared what he saw with his friends. However, the parents who heard the rumor did not remain silent. After winter break at school, my nephew talked about having a Christmas party with his older cousins. It seems they used a class presentation to share their winter break memories. Among stories of New Year's Day and video game consoles as Christmas gifts, my mom gave my cousin a special present just for her. When the teacher asked what kind of present it was, my nephew described exactly what he saw. A cute stuffed animal all torn up with lots of red stuff on it, like blood. The story became a topic of discussion among the school teachers and escalated into a major issue after the children who heard it went home and told their parents. My daughter, still hurting, hasn't been able to go back to school since the Christmas party. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that my daughter and her cousin were related, so they speculated that her absence was related to the incident. Of course, that was the case, but I wished it had remained unnoticed and undisturbed. I had intended to wait until my daughter was ready to go back to school on her own accord. Her cousin didn't share the story to be funny, but rather to find a way to stop his mom's terrible behavior. He, too, was pained by her actions. Learning this, her husband realized he couldn't delay the divorce any longer and agreed to her demands in exchange for her consent. By then, she had become infamous in the neighborhood as the woman who threatened children, and no one would associate with her. Feeling cornered, she agreed to the divorce, thinking returning to her parents' home would end her nightmare. However, they turned her away at the gate, banning her from ever showing her face there again. With nowhere to go, she resorted to spending nights with random men in exchange for meals and a place to stay. When she couldn't find a man, she borrowed money from dangerous sources, accumulating a massive debt. Eventually, she disappeared. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report, reasoning that she's not a child anymore. They agree it's better this way, not willing to take care of her if she returns. Since then, my daughter has been able to go back to school on her own. Her former brother-in-law didn't move, so her cousin still attends the same school. He now says it's his turn to protect her, and they have become closer than ever. This has led to a deeper friendship between us and my former brother-in-law, as our children have brought us together. My in-laws now call both my daughter and their grandson their dear grandchildren, stepping in as their guardians when needed. With my sister-in-law gone, there's no more tension, and we have built a very trusting and reliable family relationship.